Quit talking, pay attention. Okay, the last session of the last day is always the most energetic, so we're gonna prove that again today. We got three really dynamic talks. The first one is going to be by Matthew Hansen on global land cover and land use monitoring. Annunzio is going to talk about digital public infrastructure on sustainable ag supply chains. Pascal, who works with him, could not be here, but certainly wanted to join. And last but not least, well, maybe least,
That's not cool.
is assessing the use of Earth observation for compliance in the EU's deforestation program, also known as EUDR. I'm going to give, so we have an hour and a half for this and only three talks. I'm going to give each set of speakers 20 minutes, and then we'll have question and answers, and we'll see where we end up. So, and Matthew and Rémi, especially, can you just give everyone a little bit of insight into where you're coming from and why you're here? Where you grew up and what school you went to? That would be good. I think we all know Ariel. Elena, maybe it's to say something about yourself as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Matthew.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, Matt Hansen. I went to Mohawk Trails Elementary School in Indiana. But no, I'm a professor at the University of Maryland. Luckily enough, came to Maryland. They were the first. My advisor and some other people at NASA invented global land cover mapping and monitoring using weather satellites. And so, like from 1995, I've been mapping the planet, doing the same thing, just with better data and better algorithms. So kind of nice if you like that kind of thing. So now we are in this pretty much golden age of having virtual constellations with Sentinel-2A and B, Landsat 8 and 9. These are optical sensors, and they're really great calibrated, great bands. And so that's our workhorse. We work with the public, open stuff, so we work with countries, train them on methods, and we want the idea is that everyone can work from the same thing. There's no closed systems in this regard. A little bit of that background on me, but fun work. I appreciate it. Really, thank you all for letting me know about your work. It's a different scale. It's different. The economics part of it is largely new to me. I stay in my box, but this has been very illuminating and also challenging to see how maybe the global data don't always. I'm the first to say it. They don't not always. You cut it out. It's not always great. But that's the goal. The goal is globally consistent, locally relevant data. That's the goal. And we're still working on it. See how far we can go. Don't read this, but this is just the idea that we use a lot of different approaches. Each theme is different. We use different algorithms. We use different inputs, different feature spaces. We're doing soybean versus surface water versus urbanization. These are different algorithms and inputs. And the number one thing that we've come to know in the last 10 15 years, and it really was the IPCC driving this, was pixel counts aren't reporting quality data. Every map is biased. Every map has errors. And you guys know that's why you don't use the stuff at local scales. So we spend about half our time doing area estimation with reference data. The satellite is a great, I'll give an example of soybean. The satellite's a great targeting mechanism to get the answer. The map is not necessarily the answer. It depends on your application. So this last slide, area estimation, is a big deal. We also do alerts, which I'll allude to quickly. So the alerts are near real-time detections of something like deforestation that communities in the Amazon, in the Peruvian Amazon, can go out and interdict and see what's up. So a lot of people have taken our alerts and used them to monitor their land base. Don't look at this too much either, but we start with yeah, exactly. Talk amongst yourself now. We start with land cover and then we get down to land use. We have a hierarchy. Every box is a theme. Every box is one of these exercises to make a product, and then we have to harmonize them. And we have a hierarchy. But as you go down this thing, you're getting into more particular land use, like crop type, and that's a very different thing to map than cropland, which is a very different thing to map than vegetation. So we have a lot of structure there. But we do map what we call like a comprehensive land use, and we're trying to build it out more and more and more. And the EUDR is a great use case. What are the specific commodities in particular lands? And we're all about land use change. I think a lot of what a lot of the examples here were like land use efficiency and reducing, impacts and improving production and resource management. But we are really about where we're losing nature to land use and where are those rates, increasing or otherwise. So I'll just give you a little example. This is Southeast US. We map it, and each one of these things again has a little blurb at the bottom where we do a different thing. Here we map every pixel in the archive to say whether it's water or not water. We use topographic maps to say where the wetlands are in terms of terra firma. This is just vegetation cover at the peak. This is Southeast US. It's all green, but we get the dry seasons and the winters with this kind of layer. We use JEDI, which is a space-based LiDAR to calibrate height mapping with Landsat. So all the dark greens are taller forests. So we're mapping tree height here. Then we can just start getting into use. This is cropland, generic cropland extent, row crops. And then we can add certain cultivars. We're doing soybean and corn, wheat. This is, key for commodities, and it's really fun to look at places like Brazil and see how that's changing. Deep learning is how you do settlements. This is Landsat. It's pretty blurry, but still coherent, but it's the pattern that the algorithm wants, not per pixel. And we do use Planet every once in a while. This is an example of Planet structure, vertical structures with Planet, much more discrete. It's better to look at the built environment with Planet than Landsat. And then everything about change. We're doing tree cover loss here and tree gain. So we call this like the tree belt from East Texas all the way up to Virginia. It's forestry. Everything's churning all the time. Cropland dynamics is not so big here, nor is built up gain, but we're tracking those gains as well. So I'll zoom into Monroe, Louisiana. We got the Mississippi Delta on the right, the piney woods on the left, different land uses. All of it is almost land use in the eastern US. And you zoom in, and so we have this kind of picture, and we're trying to make an abstraction that is faithful to reality. And so that's the idea. Do we make a suite of products that can support decision making? That is our goal. But like I said, and I'll get to it in a bit, these maps are not, I wouldn't bet my life on any pixel being right. All right. The general trends. Okay. Our flagship product being the first one we did with Global Forest Watch, and it's still ongoing. And we're mapping, commodity land use expansion, smallholder ag, logging, and fire. Just a generic tree cover mortality map, really, where trees dying. Our biggest focus is in the humid tropics. And, the idea here, and this is a log plot, but this is the amount of forest remaining on the x-axis, the amount of forest loss on the y-axis, and everything moves that way because this is a non-renewable resource. And so if you're up in the top left, it's a cleanup operation. There's very little, small fragments. These are places where restoration should be occurring. And it's Central America, it's West Africa, it's mainland Southeast Asia. Small amount, fragments of forest left, high rates of loss. And we saw that with Ghana. These, on the other hand, are the big forest countries with big absolute forest loss. And Bolivia, amazingly, is in there. By far the highest deforestation rate per capita, by far, a magnitude greater than the next one. And their natural capital is just going to big ag interests. And we know Indonesia, DRC, Brazil, they're the usual suspects. There's these intermediate countries that are evolving. Peru came out of the woodwork in terms of large change in like around 2012 with some big plantation activity. But these are intermediate countries. And then these are the countries that we call high forest, low deforestation that Red Plus doesn't easily, if you're focused on slowing deforestation, these guys aren't part of the game. They need to be paid or compensated for just maintaining their forests. The commodity land uses that are frontal activity like pasture and row crops, they're not there. It's mining and logging, but this is the best forest we have in the rainforest. So that's what we do. We also try to do attribution. So this is an example of forest loss on the left, and then the forest loss due to fire in pink, and then mechanical removals in blue. And so this is a deep learning exercise where you're trying to use pattern to say that's a fire, this is a tornado, that's a disease, and the more we do this, the more we can separate the background climate feedback, because we're seeing tons of climate in our data now. It's just shooting up. We see big fires in Canada, incredible increases in fire in humatropics. I'm spacing out in the numbers, but it's a magnitude greater than it was 20 years ago. So this natural thing is a big thing to separate, and storms, landslides in Peru, Indonesia. So that's a big deal. Bark beetle, yeah, we got bark beetle in Granby in Colorado, big time. Black Hills, South Dakota, British Columbia. Yeah, we get all that. We get other vectors in Russia, and we have to separate it. And then they go in and salvage log it, and that confuses us. We're like, well, how do you do that? How do you handle that? But the next example is what we do. Half of our time is throwing samples and looking at time series individual pixels and attributing their traits, whether it was a dense humatropical primary forest, was it cleared, was it logged? And we don't know anything about the map. The map is our stratifier for this, but from this, we get this kind of plot that is the answer. Our map might correlate with this. Our map might have two bad years. It doesn't matter. This is the answer. So when we look at this time series, and we did this with the Indonesian government, we get some epochal, trends. The big El Nino of 1997, we had a big El Nino 2015-16. Thereafter, they brought it down, and we're anticipating with the new government, although it didn't go up, but they have this food estates and biofuel national security thing where they're talking about 10 million hectares of clearing. Haven't seen it yet, but the previous Minister of Environment, very low. And this is the kind of thing, if you're looking at sustainability, you want to have durable, maybe permanent, and trending towards zero loss before you get rid of the forest. That's a key thing, because you will go down eventually. Okay. And then you have, then we do the drivers. How much of it was palm oil? How much of it's idle? One of the big stories in Indonesia is idle land. They clear it, they make money on the timber, and then it sits for 5-10 years. And so there's a controversy over whether when they put, is it degraded land or is it deforested land? But eventually that blue line, the blue bar, it all a lot of it goes to palm in the end. They wait for financing, they wait for the price. We do this at the global scale. So this is using little subsets of planet data as a truth, and we map it, hand curate these maps, and we get the drivers at the global scale. This is a paper's coming out in Science, and supposed to be out early next week, I think, from Sasha Tukavin of our group. But this is a sample-based estimate that uses the map as a targeting mechanism, and you get a big answer. And this is definitive. We don't worry about the accuracy. This is the answer. We also do cropland. We have 100 million hectares of new cropland globally in the first 20 years of this century. Over half of it in Africa to population growth. The other big chunk, threefold increase South America, commodities, a lot of that going to China. This is a fun one. This is where it gets a little more in situ. So we mapped soybean and corn and different commodities. But when we do that, we have a near-term history, and we can stratify the continent in a high, medium, and low strata and go visit these clusters. They're blocks, 20-kilometer blocks, and visit in the growing season, let's say soybean. So this is on a chapada in northeast Brazil. And we have a probability sample. The satellite tells us where to go, but all of the observations driving the estimate are in situ. And so again, this idea that the satellite is a targeting mechanism. And then we map these blocks, and we get a population of blocks, and this is the basis of a statistical method for getting the area. And so we can talk about soybean, 348,000 square kilometers plus or minus 2%, using this method that is an in situ based estimate. So we're very keen on this. And this method we use in the US and Brazil, because countries don't do these things. It's like, FAO knows this. They don't do forest accounting the same way. Countries just submit a number, and maybe they did, use remote sensing, maybe they didn't. This thing is generic. We've done Punjab wheat, we've done Australia wheat, we've done, Brazil corn. It's nice. So this is all the traveling we've done over the last 6 or 7 years. And it's an iterative thing where the thing gets better. And the big story is, we are at parity with Brazil and soybean extent in 2017. And since then, they've increased almost 50%. And you think about the US as the breadbasket of the world, we used to say, they're crushing it. And you look at the noise in the US, 2019 was initial tariffs that were thrown out there by our administration. And that we'll see what happens this coming summer because the fuel prices and whatnot. So it's a really kind of flatlining with some, low spots, but Brazil's, killing it. But we do have it leveling off of Brazil there. And there's our uncertainties. So we really like that approach. And then we can look at where this is coming from, how much of it's coming out of nature. So 50% of the global cropland expansion came out of nature. And this is a big deal, right? What are we doing to, the forest and the carbon sinks and the climate regulation capacity of nature and biodiversity, obviously. So the other thing I want to say is we're shifting to this harmonized Landsat Sentinel-2 data, and this is 1 day's capture of 30-meter data. This is Landsat 8. This is a couple of years ago. This is Landsat 9, Sentinel-2A, Sentinel-2B. At 30 meters is the best we've ever done. With one Landsat, you get a return every 16 days, and then it's cloudy, and you're like, oh, you got a month, you're done. It's really hard. This is great. So we're getting 2 to 3, 4-day repeat observation with crops and a lot of these things that require phenology and for near real-time alerts. This is the best we can do. Very happy with these data. So we download every image of HLS every day and make an alert product. So I'll give you an example of what the alert looks like. We get the data within 48 hours. We return our product within 12 hours, but our product is an anomaly estimator. So you have the near-term history for that date in the past few years. And then you see if the current observation is above or below that. Certainly if it's below that, that's a vegetation loss. So all these red tones that are come on, and there's a date up in the top right, left corner. You don't have to pay attention to that. But this is the conversion of Cerrado, which is the hotspot for the last 20 years, 25 years in Brazil, because they moved all the soybean out into this Cerrado. But all these reds, and you can almost imagine a tractor moving across one of these areas. That's all. Now, the problem is some of this is fire, some of it's clearing. But then we can add our cropland layer and our soybean mapping, and we can say, okay, all the light green was an alert before, and it started in 2020. So this is after EUDR's threshold. The disturbance occurred after 2020. The soybean came after 2020. So you could highlight these places. And certainly the red polygons that remain are going to turn into soybean as well. So this kind of fusing alerts with particular land covers and land uses in a kind of time series is useful. So this is an animation of alerts of nickel mining in North Maluku, Indonesia. And you can see, the road goes over the top of the mountain from the coast. And so this is running all the time and a good decision support tool. I just got off call with WCS, who's working with us on mining and water quality. So this is an example where we can turn our water observations. Here we're mapping every pixel of water. If we know it's water, then we can run a water quality thing. It's this total suspended sediment concentration. And here we see mining through time in a mine in Pará, Brazil. That was active in the early 80s, then abandoned, then came back more recently when the prices got favorable again. This is artisanal mining, et cetera. So that's fine. Last thing I got, I'm good, thanks. We are interested in nature. So what we're working towards is global land cover land use. Let's try and build out the land use with as much relevant detail as possible. So divide cropland into the big intensive traded commodities. Put in plantations, tree plantations, not just tree cover. And so we've started working on this suite of, and we're focused on the tropics because that's the hotspot of conversion of natural lands. So you've got different crops, you got plantations. The plantations we're breaking out into oil palm and other things. And of course, pasture is the big one globally and particularly in South America. So this is the 10 years of new land use. And then we update the story for 2024. And then you can basically erode land use. So where has land use, where is intensive land use, what is left? And if you put down ecoregions, you would see that the last big chunk of Chaco is in southern Bolivia. I'm spacing on the national park name, but they just built a bridge on the western edge to cross the Key River that was keeping people out. the Sahara, the chapadas of the Cerrado are almost all cleared. That big yellow area is State Park Jalapão. It's the the biggest trunk. That big green area there was just incursion. There's a big incursion and conversion. So you're trying to, one of the ideas about nature is how do you interdict land use change, and can you do it once it's started? Once it's started and the road's in and all the plots have been allotted, you're kind of screwed. So we're just trying to highlight the last bits of nature or conservation, really. Yeah, whatever this is. Yeah, I think I just say data policy is really important. I think we need free and open data. In the US, if you go below 10 meters, there's no law written about this, but NASA can't go below 10 meters. It's not like Planet invented 5-meter data. You're just not allowed to do it. And why the hell is that? And now Planet's trying to take over the Landsat program. They went and lobbied, and the president's budget is saying, "Oh, we're going to turn it back to commercial," which was a failed mission in the 90s. They already did. Environmental applications can't afford to buy these data, right? But even the U.S. government has done, for domestic purposes, 2 studies to show that the applications of the government and U.S. companies pay for the mission. So they have really no justification for this, except that and if the global climate and environment's a big deal, what are you doing, right? So we want to have reliable data streams. ESA's on board. I mean, we'll just switch exclusively to ESA products if they do that. But that's the bedrock. We have reliable weather satellites that never fail. They have redundant capacity on orbit. We need to have the land be more like that. And the more people looking at the data, the more problems we solve together. It shouldn't be closed system and have a lot of costs. So that's not what that says. But anyway, I don't know why. What does that mean? We're not methods or data limited. Yeah, okay. We are limited. Really, we have Brazil slowed their deforestation rate from 30,000 square kilometers down to below 5,000 with one Landsat 5 sensor that showed the scale of the problem and then was the evidence of the success of the policy intervention. It's, so I don't think we're really data limited. I like my job. I'll take all the data and the cool algorithms, stuff like that. But it's really the focus on like a next shiny object to save us is not the deal. It's all about governance, and we're not great at that. So that's my complaint, I guess. That's it. Thanks.
Next time you might want to have a few more maps, but other than that, thanks. Take any questions, comments? I'm going to start with you. If you are not in front of a microphone, wait for the microphone to come to you. Thank you.
Okay, hey, Matt, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm Johannes from KfW Development Bank. Huge fan of your products since my PhD 10 years ago. One thing that I wanted to comment, which I think is great from your initiatives, is that you don't only provide the data open source, but you also make it accessible, machine readable. These are things that are very important for data pipes, for my institutions to basically analyze this data in an automated way. So I just wanted to give that feedback. And I have a question also for you, because in my institution, we have a lot of need to quantify not only forest cover loss, but basically forest cover change. And we do support financially huge afforestation areas. And one of the greatest data lags is basically being able to quantify afforestation and monitor it long term in order to set up, for example, compensation schemes and stuff like that. So is there anything in the pipeline regarding that, or maybe already out that I'm not aware of?
We have tree height time series. We look at gain as a post characterization comparison thing. It's not a discrete event; it's a continuum. So that's our perspective. That's how we're mapping gain. So there's two things we're working at: is just recovery or afforestation, reforestation, whatever it is, through the time series. And you can do that we have annual height products, but they're only from 2015 forward. That might get you there. We face the same problems when we're trying to do attribution of land use. How long do you need? Does the palm need to grow before you can say that's oil palm? Maybe initially you need to identify it as, well, there's trees there, there's woody cover, but so there is this lag always from the satellite perspective in getting it. I will say when you go back to like the commitments from countries when they got to when reforestation became a big deal in Peru, 1 million hectares, we don't see millions and millions of hectares. We see spots here and there, and if you have we should start putting up polygons of these databases on our height time series and seeing what evidence there is at scale. I think we could do that now. We just haven't done it, but I appreciate the critique. It's just a hard one in terms of lag.
Anyone else on the side? One, okay, and then you.
So Matt, thanks a lot. Even after the cocktail yesterday, you are still the boss, and you show us really inspiring demonstration. What I really appreciate is how you separate the terra firma and wetlands, and I think it's so important that it's not only forest. You have wetlands in forest. We went to COP30 to say that because it's why you have biodiversity and carbon, and so this is really, really super important. I wanted to point that. One comment when you talk about nature, one little comment about Chaco and Sarasota. What we call nature, generally indigenous people that are, it's not human separated. Nature is the idea of humans. And so remember that also the humans are there, but they are different. You have humans with bulldozers and you are humans that are actually protecting the forest. It's nature is not, it's separated by technology and by big machines, not by humans or not humans. So this is one small comment. Another thing is, of course, we are now in this biodiversity agenda, and I want to see how this is useful. You talked about ecosystem extent, many things will still to be mapped for the CBD, for example. How you see all that being useful for the CBD that is still missing many things. How you see this data that you propose useful for CBD? Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's a kind of a dream, but when you have the maps of stable natural land cover of different fragment size, it's almost like, well, let's do a structured survey along gradients, and but the ecologists like their park. I know talking to WCS people working in parks in Bolivia, and they're like, the park's really good. I'm like, do you see how close the soybean is? It's like it's almost on your front door. It's coming, and that's just not in their it's not their purview, right? But I think it's really important to be doing biodiversity surveys along the whole gradient outside of the park. And we don't have any top-down real structure or mechanism to do that because, we don't know how big a fragment you have to have reach a certain level of whatever species richness you're looking for. And everything is just fragmentations are increasing, and even national parks, if they get to a certain fragment size, they're very likely to be converted like West Africa. So it's a big deal. So I think the satellite as a targeting mechanism would help us answer some of those questions, but it'd cost money, certainly.
Thanks for the great presentation, Matt. So curious to see if you've seen significant changes. I know you're mapping the permanent snow and ice, and obviously in the last 10, 20, 30 years, right? Big changes there. So are you seeing a significant change in the higher latitudes of a reduction in that with the maps that you're making?
We've mapped in ice is permanent ice, and we have a paper on the Himalayan Hindu Kush that does but this is well done repeatedly by people in terms of reduction of permanent ice, and then also the increase in ponding at the base of these things and the global lake outburst flooding and stuff. So it's all in there. We did a longer time series from using AVHR data in 1982 to pick up more woody cover on the north slope. At the higher latitudes, a lot more woody cover, and same up gradient on an elevation. So, but in terms of snow and ice, no, we're not leading the pack in that theme.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if you're thinking about making any tools accessible that are as accessible as your products for local validation and calibration of the maps for people who are interested in kind of quick answers. But
nothing we do is quick, but we've been working with over 20 countries, not intense. It's like Rémi's team does a lot more of this, but we've partnered through a now defunct USAID project called Silvacarbon, and we still work with the World Bank in 2 countries, the 2 Congos, and the idea there is to have them do the same mapping we do, and I have a paper that is going to be submitted very soon. It's with co-authors right now, but it's very contrary to where we're going with AI. It's very handheld both in the mapping and the reference data interpretation and the iteration of everything, it's super because IPCC requires countries to own the process. Your foundation model should not be the thing that a country turns in as for their report, right? So it's very important for us that the analysts know beginning to end exactly how their map was made and then how the statistics led to this number, and then what you could do to it to reduce uncertainty. There's a big iteration part. So we're into that. But that would come with a suite of tools per your question, which we haven't done yet, except putting the products out. So expect something like that, and it's generic in a way. I mean, it's focused for forests, but that's one thing we are planning.
Okay, I'm going to take two more questions. Make them quick because they're a little bit over.
My one's super quick. Thank you. I've been using the tree height data up till 2020, and I saw in your presentation that you've now done it up till 2024. As far as I can see, that's not available online yet.
That's a problem because that's done, and we're working on 2025 right now. So I'll look into that. I thought we solved that. I've heard this. So I've heard this. Thanks. I'll look it up.
Thank you.
Nice. No. Can I? Sorry. You spoke a little bit about it, but with tree loss attribution, how are you working with these different timescales? It's a technical question, if it's okay with everyone, because I mean, it's like you already said, a lot of the tree loss is actually other trees growing back. So at which timescales are you doing the attribution? And how does this look? We're also doing it. That's why I ask.
Okay. Well, we have 20 some, I think it's like 25 years of tree cover loss now. So we can just do that in bulk, just straight up. And then moving forward, we're part of this NASA project. The alerts called DIST alerts is part of a program called OPERA. And we have money to do attribution of alerts, which is near real time. And I think it's going to be similar hierarchical, natural, mechanical will be this, that, and the other thing. So we're just going to work it through, but that's a harder one, right? Because you don't have a lot of information, but we're trying that. But the thing I showed was here's 24 years of change. Let's just attribute the stuff. But the fire, that's a standard product. We do that every year. Tree cover loss due to fire, that we do that. No, every year we do fire attribution every year. But the thing I showed was like 24 years of mechanical versus natural. That was just a bulk attribution. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
let's give Matthew a big round of applause. And we're going to go next to Rémi. Don't forget to give us your life story first.
So hi everyone, I'm Rémi. I'm French. That's my best asset to it. It's always a great pleasure to.
So
Yeah, I know. That's why I thought would be the best intro. Thanks for having me. No thanks for having me after Matt, because it's always going to be the easiest presentation. I'm speaking on behalf of Pascal Ripplinger from the German cooperation agency GIZ, and obviously my team in FAO in the forest monitoring team. We have a little bit of a pitch around what we do on digital public infrastructure, specifically applied to sustainable agriculture supply chains. What I would like to do in this session is show how we use products, those open data, those of GLAD among others, but certainly as prominent ones, and how we actually make them useful for specific processes like sustainable supply chains. So I'm going to start with the slides from Pascal. So you will forgive me if things are not super straightforward and clear. But the one thing we wanted to talk about first is the scarcity of solutions that are actually existing right now, that are happening at the same time as there is a fragmented market and no standard approaches to use this data and tools. So that's echoing the question that was asked just earlier. So basically, we want more digital in supply chains, but in the same time, there is a lack of access. We have a fragmented landscape. And this leads to more burden on people who need to get the data being obtained and get over and over again. And also because of the lack of fully open approaches to those to the solutions, there's dependency on proprietary solutions that lead eventually to risk of exclusions, specifically for smallholders that are involved in those chains. So that's the challenge. The way we when I say we, I will say that later. What I mean by we, the way we want to try to approach or solve part of that is by contributing to a digital public infrastructure. By DPI, we mean a set of technology building blocks that are interoperable, that are using standards, and that can drive inclusion and innovation. That's a standard definition. You feel free to reuse that. But really, this is the environment in which we try to develop tools and solutions to address the challenge before. Specifically, we are looking at the DPI for sustainable agriculture. And we have that, I don't know if this, yeah. We have that comparison between what a physical infrastructure for transportation is compared to what a digital public infrastructure for agriculture is. So if you want the trains, the vehicles, the gear, the computers inside, those physical objects are the IT solutions, and their parallel in the digital agricultural world would be human-machine interface, apps, software, applications, things like this. And in parallel, in the transportation infrastructure, we would have license plates, signal, traffic routes, stations, those physical items that are actually the standards and the way to transport people. We have the same thing to transport data. And we have unique identifiers, we have data standards, and so on and so forth. So what we try to work on is that side of things, of the DPI. And, you know, for better or worse, that's the best comparison we have so far to explain what we do. Okay. The DPI specifically for agriculture, the idea behind is that we use the same shared semantics, the same shared data elements, and the use of open solutions, open data, re-echoing what Matt was saying earlier. There is no way we can do that if we are not using both open data and open protocols and open solutions. And by using those, we can actually reach interoperability. I never managed to say that one properly. And I've been trying to say it for like over 5 years now. So yeah, the goal is to manage to do that because interoperability allows us to get rid of that dependency on lock-in solutions and allow for competitiveness to actually happen where it's needed. So this is my final slides for what I'm saying on behalf of Pascal, and then I will say stuff that I'm usually doing. But we got together because there is this platform that's existing that's driven by GIZ, by the German corporation. It's a digital alliance for sustainable chains and agriculture, something like this. But it's essentially a neutral stakeholder network, essentially public, not enough private as we go forward. But it's really there as a neutral network to foster deeper implementation in agriculture, repeating those messages and trying to help foster exchange, coordinate efforts, co-create solutions with the ultimate goal to empower smallholders through their participation. We have lots of people that are part of the ASCA, and it's still a very active network through which we designed the Aim for Commodities program, which is the umbrella program under which we work in FAO, in the forestry monitoring team on supply chains. So I'd like to acknowledge both our donors, Germany and the UK. The UK joined us at COP last year with match fundings up to 2030 to support the efforts to build those solutions and blocks on sustainable supply chains. And I'll speak relatively quickly around what we do on those themes. So engaging on a wide range of stakeholders around those good practices and standards. and developing the technical blocks that we deploy, hopefully at scale. So first thing is I'm really happy to tell you that we're launching 2 publications today. It's taken a long while to get there, specifically for the first one on the mapping tree crop commodities. Disambiguating forest and tree-based agricultural land use is the tricky thing. Essentially, cocoa, coffee, rubber. Matt already touched based on that quickly, but we still managed to bring together different institutions, different private companies, digital solution providers, governments, to sit at the same table and agree on what are the good practices to map those tree crop communities. There's no rocket science in there. It's a short document of 30 pages, but it does have an essential message, which is that if products like those maps are being produced, they should be made available for all. They should be inspectable. They should be submitted to transparency and scrutiny. And this is the essential message. And I'm really happy we managed to sit down and to have 35 plus authors to come down and agree on this. So it's out. I'll put a QR code on my computer if you're interested in scanning that afterwards. The second one is equally important. It was work we did in cooperation with Preferred by Nature. And that really underlines the importance of transparent data governance when we include smallholder data in those models and how we use that data. So both studies are launched now as we speak. They go live, so feel free to go and check them and tell us what you think about it. Okay, now, so that was on what we do on standards and on those approaches to data. Now I would like to quickly show you 3 bits of those building blocks and the interoperability around them. So I would like to talk about GeoIDs, which is unique identifiers for just geolocation data, and the way it can be used in traceability chains to optimize the way geolocation data is shared. The second one is a quick ground data application, which is called Cleverly Ground, which we co-developed with Google. I'll speak about how we use that and how it can be used to leverage AI at scale or like large machine learning at scale. And then I'll speak about WISP specifically for the EUDR and how it's being used to implement convergence of evidence and to combine those land cover and land use products. We do this work, we develop those bits of technology under the Team Europe initiative, Zero Deforestation Hub. This is part of the Global Gateway, and I don't know, I just had to say that. So one slide, I promise, one slide each. So GeoIDs, that was initially developed by Axstack with some strong inspiration from what was done by Varda under the GeoField IDs. We have now transferred the database and code base inside the FAO system, and we have an anonymous, addressable but not discoverable segue. It's OGC and Stack compliant. We host the database, but we also allow to have specific instances held by countries so that we can transfer ownership of the GeoIDs and the registries in countries that are partnering with us. All this to say, we just translate. Oh no, not that. I just want to say that we just translate. Can I have a laser? No, I don't have. Okay, that yellow vector data, we simplify that into a unique chain of characters that's predictable in size, like those things in red down there. That's a GeoID itself. It's anonymous. You don't know that it's Rémi's field there, but if you have it, you can find back the information geospatially, and it's easy to share across traceability chain. We use that to have components of the DPI talk to each other. So that's GeoIDs. The second one I want to mention is Ground. So we co-developed Ground with Google to try to bring to the next level in terms of intuitive design and collection to make a field experience as easy as possible. Of course, to have like offline modality and to have automatic synchronization possible in the cloud. Ground is based on Kotlin. So at the moment, it's Android native, but we are transferring as we speak to Kotlin multi-platform, and we should have a multi-platform implementation by the end of the year, so that includes iOS. Very happy to have an e-learning course that has been released last year on it. I'll show you afterwards how we've been using Ground. It's great, it works fine, but there are other solutions that are around that do similar things. We got Field presented, for instance, this morning, that IFAD does things like this. ODK, Kobo, all those are in the end interoperable solution that can be used. We tried with Ground to really improve the user experience in the field and to make it as intuitive as possible. Okay, last bit, WISP. This is also a simple thing we did, which is just a protocol to gather land use and land cover maps and use them at the plot level to produce zonal stats and organize them into decision trees to provide land use information by combining land cover and land use. What we do in WISP is combine global, regional, but also national data sets when they are there. We combine tree cover, forest cover, tree cover loss, alerts, all those products that Matt mentioned before, but also others that are developed by the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, for instance, but also national products when they are good and transparent and published and the metadata is clear. And we have an API that's being used in external platforms increasingly. So now I have 3 last slides. Do I still have 5 minutes to talk? Okay, cool. Let me just say the WISP API has been active for a year and a half. It's powered by Earth Engine, and we have around 250,000 geometries queried every month through it. Okay, so interoperability. What we did in WISP is not try to develop a graphical user interface. We have a simple API that can be plugged, that's free to use, that's anonymous, and that we work to be efficient and to do the same things repeatedly again. And for some reason, it has found its public, so we have it plugged in many different platforms and solutions, and we're very happy about having external applications, not only ours, that are using WISP to analyze that data. So it's being integrated across multiple tools and platforms. We have national traceability solutions that heard about it, looked at it, said, okay, the API is simple, it works, we can actually make data available through this. The Ethiopia Coffee Traceability Management System is one example of those traceability platforms that say, hey, let's just use that. One of the reasons for which it has been widely adopted so far is also because we allow national data inclusion, and that echoes what Christophe was saying, I think, this morning from ESA on the importance of also when the data is good and of good quality, put it together with global data sets to enrich it. And there is value in local data that can be used that way. So we have examples of country data sets coming into the pack. So yeah, that's that. The second thing I wanted to mention is with Ground. So this is an example of a research institution called SearchGIS in Ghana. Heard about it, attended an online training on Ground, and then decided that it was a good application. They use Kobo in parallel to do socioeconomic surveys because they wanted to have more data, but for just getting quick and efficient information on the ground, they collected the information using Ground, and that data set has been part of the training data set that was used by DeepMind, who released a global layer of disaggregated crop trees a couple of days ago. I don't know if you've seen this one, but the training data for Cocoa, for Ghana, comes from this one. Again, here, it's not just the technical solution, which is important because it could have been done with something else. It's also the fact that they made the data publicly available. That has a value with the proper licensing and the proper norms around it, so that it could be used to help support larger scale land cover mapping. So we really like that example too. And then the last one, which we had to speak about EUDR, right? Because we need a segue for the next presentation, is some of those DIASCA members So like I said, we have multiple institutions that are part of the ASCA. One of them is CIAT Biodiversity, and they are doing some pilot tests on the coffee sector in countries. They did some in Honduras last year. This is one that was released for Kenya earlier this year, where some bits of this digital public infrastructure are being used to show that it's possible to make EUDR ready coffee in places. So we have a nice story. They used WISP and GeoIDs in that chain, but they used their own local application for physical traceability. They have traceability solutions that those different companies here, it's like plenty of logos. But again, a good example of when you have open data and processes, you can actually plug them together. You can choose a solution that matches what you want at scale and make it provide concrete results. So that's it for my pitch. If you want to hear more, learn more about what we're doing in general, feel free to join in. Thank you very much.
Any questions or comments for Rémi? Matt?
I got a super quick one. On the traceability, management system, is it strictly just for coffee? Is it other cash crops as well?
The last slide I showed, or
Yeah, on the coffee traceability, cocoa traceability.
So the last example I showed was coffee.
That was coffee.
Yeah, and what CIAT Biodiversity is running as their pilots is essentially run coffee, but we are using some parts of this DPI in other, like in Colombia, for instance, they are using ground and WISP to look at the whole cocoa census, and are plugging it to the rest of the work they want to do for EUDR preparedness. It depends, and it's not commodity specific.
Okay.
I mean, none of the solutions that I showed are commodity specific. They're currently being used in essentially those 3 crop commodities. Coffee, cocoa, rubber. I just received a WhatsApp from the person who's in charge of the beef sector in Paraguay, who's also using WISP. Now they're just releasing their traceability system tomorrow, I think. And they are testing and plugging WISP inside. So no, it's really not commodity specific.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. A comment about the link between Matt's presentation and your presentation. On one side, we have projects such as Global Forest Watch or Map Biomass in Brazil, when we see that, for example, deforestation went down 50% for all bioma in Brazil. And we said, thanks to Lula, we had this change. But as reality, I always like to say that there is an Uberization of fiscalization of deforestation in Brazil. They were able, from a map, to actually do a police report and block bank accounts. That's what you spotted, data sovereignty. So I wanted to see how much data that can be produced globally, how by law they can become national data that are sovereign. Because this is, I think, a big issue here. About having cooperation and confidence in the cooperation, so that you can use in one country data produced in another country or wherever.
Well, so first, we use the biomass data inside WISP, for instance, because they're of good quality. They are referenced. The metadata is published. It's got accuracy assessments. It's following good practices of how those data sets should be used, and it's also clear what limitations is in those. Now we are encouraging countries to collaborate on following the example that Brazil has led somehow in producing and being transparent about the data that they use. Now, how it can fully be transferred, I'm not sure I have all the hints, but I'm sure Matt has an idea about that.
I know our alerts. The question is, what's the standard of evidence in court, right? And are you allowed to do that? Initially, they didn't allow, Brazilian courts didn't allow like satellite data to be admissible, but now it is, and it's always supported by the raw imagery in addition to the product. And I know in Peru and other places, if prosecutors have used our alerts, but again, I don't know the total legal details. A lot of our alerts are used just to help facilitate management of parks management stuff. It's not a prosecutorial thing, but I totally appreciate that. Sometimes countries can repackage it and own it in a way, right? They can take multiple products and come up with a synthetic one. It's all good because multiple things are in itself better evidence. So I don't know. I think it's all good to have everybody, but if you were to say every country had to stand up their own particular capability, this is a tall order, you know. So there has to be other ways to thread the needle than expect that.
You're next. But no, she's next. I'm sorry, you're next.
Yeah, so kind of impressive, all the digital solutions that you've just created there. So without having insight into like the machine room, I had the impression that there's like a proliferation of traceability tools. Everyone's doing something, trying to catch up with like EUDR and traceability requirements and so on. So in the sense of this digital public infrastructure, like, do you have the feeling that like you are like this interoperability is actually happening, or are you just like working alongside each other without being interoperable at all?
Well, that was the best question so far. One of the things we try to do in this ecosystem is put together the bits that are necessary and that are not already fully existing. And if they are already existing, and there's plenty that are already existing, make sure that the components that we develop can speak to the external ones. Okay, so this is why having standards and having the same semantics and having machine readable products data is fundamental to make sure that maybe someday that DPI will happen and work. We have we chose not to build a graphical user interface because we have plenty of those for WISP, for instance. We chose not to develop traceability systems because none of this is traceability per se. It's just like little components that can be used to help those different traceability solutions talk to each other. So far, this is the angle that we've taken. The other thing is we can't prevent people from developing maps. We can't tell people to not develop their own mobile application for doing something in the field. What we can do is advocate for using standards, following good practices on how those solutions can talk to each other, produce standardized outputs, and in as much as possible, converge and be consensual. So it's going to, clearly we're not there yet at a fully pre-competitive digital public infrastructure that can help do this in full transparency. But I think we've made substantial progress over the past, 10 years, and also partly due to the regulatory pressure that the regulation that the EUDR has produced. I'm sure you're going to talk about that, so I don't want to preempt. But somehow the effect of something that the EUDR has already happened by pushing this reflection to go forward.
So, okay, thank you very much. So also thanks for the presentation. I'm also a huge fan of your work. I think WISP is really cool because you're not developing some front-end application for someone, but basically the part in between the API. And I have never seen that a lot. And it connects the data that is provided, for example, by Matt's team through an API, then to end users like me who can develop applications specific to our institution upon it. What I do wonder, though, is because you talk a lot about open standards, digital public infrastructure, etc. In the end, your things are running on Google, and Matt's products are in Google. And Google, in the end, is not OGC compliant, and they make it very, very difficult for me to use my OGC compliant software with their stuff. And I wonder whether you, at some point in time, also considered using another infrastructure, a truly open infrastructure, whether you see any risks like being Google Starling all the time, or whether there's just maybe no way around Google. I heard people talking that there is no way around. They're the only ones who can do that. Yeah.
Maybe that became the best question. That's upgraded. No, it's to go into the nitty-gritty, we speak a lot with the competent authorities of Germany, so we're very well aware of the complexity that it represents to have Earth engine technology being used by public institutions in Germany. It's a no-go. My first answer is Earth Engine has really transformed the way we can use geospatial data and process it, and it has really switched from do the thing on your own way into cloud-based at scale. It has really transformed the way somehow we all do remote sensing. At the moment, we don't have an equivalent to it. So in as much as we are OGC and stack compliant with the GeoIDs that are fully based on that, some components like WISP still require that we use Earth Engine for processing at the scale we want it to happen. We have ways of not sharing confidential data with Earth Engine to do the analysis. Don't want to go too much into detail, but it's still using that infrastructure. I would say it would be awesome if we had another alternative. It just doesn't really exist yet, but maybe as a community we should think about building it. And somehow would be very interested in participating in that effort. But yeah. Now, I don't know about the next Google, but for sure the next Earth Engine could be something that is a public good. But and I'm pretty sure the Earth Engine team themselves would be interested in building it up. But so far we don't have an equivalent, and it's been so powerful and awesome that we still rely on it.
All right. If you two both agree to be quick, I'll let one more question go.
I'll be very quick. I agree. In light of the last two questions, I just wanted to ask whether you're aware of the UN Digital Public Goods Alliance and whether you are a member.
Some of the components of what we do in Open Forest are within the DPG, and some of those are not because they're dependency to Earth Engine.
Okay, let's give Rémi another. All right, are you ready? The last presentation in the last session on the last day. It's about to commence. Ariel, I'm going to okay, Elena's going to start. Let us know who you are. I've already met you, but maybe not everyone has. So,
thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone, and I'm Elena Serfilippi. I'm the research director at the Committee on Sustainability Assessment, and I'm Italian. And I'm going to share this presentation with Ariel today. It's a joint work between the Committee on Sustainability Assessment and AidData. There is no presentation uploaded. I don't know. Maybe I move. Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, basically, what we want to do is to show how Earth observation can be used for EUDR compliance. So let's focus first on this regulation. So basically, EUDR is the European Union Deforestation Regulation. It's a regulation that is applied to certain commodities that are cocoa, coffee, palm oil, rubber, soy, wood, beef, and derived products. And basically, based on this regulation, the operators and the traders with the European Union has some obligation. So first of all, they have to show that these products are deforestation free. So this means that they should come from a land that wasn't deforested or under forest degradation after 31st of December 2020. Product should be commercialized in compliance with the law of the country of origin, and the product should be covered, once commercialized, should be covered by this due diligence statement. So what is the due diligence statement? Basically, is a document in which they have to prove the geolocation of this product, and is the GPS point is enough for a surface of land that is lower than 4 hectares. From 4 hectares above, they have to make the perimeter. And basically also in this document should be stated that these products are coming from a land that wasn't deforested. So basically, what we are seeing basically is that in the application, different solution has been proposed by different providers, and the main difficulties for this EUDR compliance have been related to inconsistent polygon qualities when geolocating the plots, and when Earth observation has been used, the resolution of the imageries that have been chosen, that were chosen, was different. And so basically on the side of the Earth observation, these were the main problem. But of course there were other problems, as the other speaker point out. We have the lack of geo-IDs sometimes, so there is a duplication of effort, there are some ambiguities on the side of EUDR. So basically, there are different countries' efforts that have been made by some top countries in the application of the EUDR, like Vietnam, Ghana, and Indonesia. So basically, these countries are developing national plans to ensure the traceability of their products and to make the company, to make the work of the company easy to trade with them. But of course, there are also a lot of private sectors efforts and civil society organization efforts. So for example, we have companies like Unilever or Nespresso that are training their farmers on the meaning of EUDR. They are contacting some providers to assess this deforestation through Earth observation with their own solutions. And we have also some certification bodies, like for example, Rainforest Alliance, that they are working hard in this compliance. And basically in the solution that are on the market, we see that are some low-cost open source solutions, like WISP, for example, InnaTrace, and many others. And there are some paid solutions, like the one proposed by Inveritas, Satelligence, Solidaridad, Training Space. So basically, what's the problem with this law is that since sometimes these mechanisms are very costly to certify, to assess the compliance to EUDR, some actors can be basically excluded from the market, especially the actors that are not under a cooperative mechanism, some actors that are poorly digitalized, for example. And so we have a lot of risk that we exclude farmers from the markets through this regulation. So what we have done with the AidData based on this idea was basically to test different solutions and tools that were developed for EUDR compliance, tools that were using different Earth observation and geolocation mechanisms. And basically, we have considered these tools and we have compared them to a benchmark model that was using the best available technologies in terms of satellite imageries, in terms of geolocation, in terms of ground data, ground truthing of the data. And so basically what we wanted to see is that how these different tools were performing in terms of cost effectiveness with respect to this benchmark model that we created with the best available technologies. And basically, we are presenting today, together with Ariel, a study that we conducted in Honduras. Why Honduras? Because basically in Honduras, there is a community of practice, a strong one, around EUDR. And in this community of practice, there are around 30 initiatives going on, each one with their own solution, their own tools to assess deforestation and to assess the EUDR compliance. And so basically, in this community of practice, we pick up 3 initiatives that we call early action initiatives. And you can see them in the map, they are in green. And these initiatives were using different Earth observation tools and different geolocation tools. And also we had around 750 farmers in these early action initiatives. And then we also sampled, anyway, other 750 farmers that were not a part of any initiatives, and we sampled them from the ICAF National Coffee Registry of 2022, 2023. In a way that we had a group to compare the farmers belonging to the early action initiatives. So basically, we conducted a socioeconomic survey with these farmers to see how these farmers were performing in terms of production, in terms of socio-demographic characteristics. And most of the farmers basically are male farmers, around 76%. The rest are female farmers. And this is a statistic that is in line with the ICAFE National Coffee Registry. And then also most of the farmers lack of formal education, but they have a lot of years of experience in cultivating coffee. And then about the farm size, these are considered small farmers in Honduras because they have a farm size that is lower than 4 hectares. Think that in Honduras, large farmers have a farm size around 35 hectares, so these are small farmers. And then actually in this, together with the socioeconomic survey, we ask information about the land use change, and these farmers didn't report deforestation. 97 of them say that they didn't change the coffee area since 2021. If they change something, they are the new coffee trees in area that were left to rest, or they purchase new areas. And then also 30% of these producers didn't have any knowledge about EUDR. But we observed some differences between the sample of producers belonging to the early action initiatives and the sample of producers that didn't belong to the early action initiatives. And these differences were in terms of EUDR knowledge, because the people belonging to the early action initiative had a better knowledge of EUDR, but also in terms of production, farm size, in terms of cooperative membership. This means that the farmers that were targeted in the early action initiative were a small sample of farmers, better organized, and with the characteristics that made them better than the other farmers that were excluded by the initiative. And now Ariel will explain you the technical part.
This is a good segue to also credit the many other team members that we had that actually did the technical work that Elena and I get to sit here and represent. I'll just say that also this is a really interesting comparison or segue with Matt and Rémi's presentations in many ways, because this is an effort to take global scale data products and other privately provided data products that are all kind of aiming to do something in this particular context of EUDR compliance, where, as far as we know, the quality assurance rate at the local scale, like at the farm scale, has to be 100% for that farmer to actually be able to access the EU market, like the coffee we were just drinking. You know, in many ways, the uses that we've been talking about are cases where, on average, it's got to be right? Like, I mean, like the first day I said a 60 to 70% prediction accuracy rate would be fine because I was just using outcome measures. Here, the stakes are much higher at the individual farmer level. And so what we're doing in this case is subjecting global scale or in some cases even country scale data to a much stricter benchmark. So let me tell you about the kind of stricter benchmark that we attempted to compare them to. The first was to collect plot boundary data. And I explained that EUDR does not require plot boundaries for farms below 4 hectares, despite the fact that much of the coffee is being produced at that much smaller scale. So one thing we wanted to really carefully understand is how much does that potential mismeasurement of the location of all of the coffee and other trees on that plot contribute to potential noise or mismeasurement of deforestation. So what we did was buy some really expensive Arrow GPS devices, train the enumerators really carefully in them, and have them very carefully walk around the plot boundaries. Again, this is not recommended for standard practice. This is way more expensive and time consuming than you would ever want to do. But again, if you're trying to set the kind of most careful benchmark, you would want. Sylvia can attest to the fact that she looked at us several times and said, "Are you crazy? This is overkill." And we kept saying, we need to make sure that we have the best possible data. And then we, of course, took that very high quality data and messed it up a lot by introducing a lot of noise that you might kind of via various models into those boundaries. So we simplified here's one particular case where we simplified the buffer, simplified them and applied buffers to them. We jittered them in the middle cases, adding basically random noise, like if the enumerator had been, going crazy as they were walking around. We took different interior and exterior buffers. And then lastly, maybe most relevant in some ways, is dropped points either at the centroids or at random locations around, and then drew buffers of various sizes, including a buffer that would get you a 4-hectare farm size, which in some ways might be overkill in terms of the amount of noise you introduce, but is, if you take the kind of EUDR specification at its most literal, maybe what you would do. So that was kind of method one, was to mess up the data after we worked really hard to collect a very good version of it. And then the other time-consuming part was to try to get all of the data that we possibly could from all the different providers who are out there. This is not recorded. Some of them may or may not be in this room, and very generously worked with us. And the other early action initiatives that are operating in general in this region, we reach out to them and obtain some of their data. Because we're trying to draw bigger lessons, we don't do championship style horse races that are public. We did provide the individual, thank you, providers kind of their own custom reports on where we found agreements or disagreements. And then what we did was pay for high resolution imagery as close to the timing of EUDR compliance as that would be required as we possibly could, as many images as we could for every farm plot, and laboriously looked at, aka visual inspection, of those images to be able to detect any any tree loss that we could. Now, many of these are coffee farms, so trees are both coffee and other types of trees that are on the plot. We've very carefully marked those and try to tag them by the degree of tree loss or change that we could observe. We then also had Matt and his team take a couple of expensive and complex drones and fly them over several dozen subset locations to try to obtain additional high-res imagery. So here's just some examples. Here's one plot. Here's Landsat for you for this plot. Here's Sentinel. Again, you might be able, this gives you a flavor for what compliance at this scale really requires. Here's PlanetScope. Here's one set of commercial images that we obtained for that same plot. And here's the really great drone stuff that if you get it everywhere, that'd be amazing. This is the fixed wing drone, and optical, and then LiDAR as well over it, which really picks up, individual coffee and other trees as well. You kind of understand the general trade-offs as we're going from public all the way down to that scale. So let me hit with some results finally. There is an incredible amount of variation in the overall deforestation rates associated with these 6 providers. Some had basically zeros. One had 9% deforestation rate. So just in terms of basic agreement rates, this is in some ways sobering, but I'll try to draw the maybe more positive conclusion in a minute. So the overall detection rates were quite different across them. In fact, no single plot had full agreement by all the providers of deforestation, except for lots of zeros where everybody agreed there was no deforestation. But there was very, very little and rare agreement among them. Partly this is actually because this is a landscape where actually detecting deforestation is quite hard, even when you have the best possible stuff you can get, including the drone-based imagery as well. So here's the 2021 VHR image that we grabbed, and here's what Matt's team flew over up above. We think that there's a band right in the middle that disappeared that you can, let's see if the pointer will work. Yep, right. This is no longer there. But these cases were very rare, where we could really kind of conclusively nail something maybe. And again, still question marks about that. Also, as a matter of fact, the EUDR regulations really are intended to focus on forested land, non-agricultural use land in the first place. So this plot may not have even qualified depending on, again, what you interpreted that original baseline image as being. And again, if this is one way to do it, but most of these are using, where we go, Sentinel, right? So is this agricultural use or not at this scale? I don't know. Okay. Also, not great agreement against our own visual interpretation either. So slightly higher rates of agreement on those that were classified as having observed any deforestation versus not. So this is those like 88% that had no single provider detecting deforestation. We saw some tree loss in these cases. But in those cases where they did detect deforestation, we still only saw tree loss, right, in like fewer than 30% of those cases when we got down to the VHR imagery. So there's still a lot of noise at that scale, even if you're combining, every type of deforestation detected by any one of these providers at all. That was a little bit sobering. The one piece of good news is that actually the GPS accuracy didn't matter very much in the end. So thank you. Most of the types of noise we introduced didn't move the needle on deforestation detection by most of the providers. The one that did, maybe not surprisingly, was when we messed it up the most by just dropping a random point and drawing the biggest buffer that we could that would comply with it. So that's, I think maybe not even necessarily the best benchmark for that. Again, if they even just stood somewhere near the center, a jittered centroid, and drew a buffer that was at all close to the size of the actual plot, not 4 hectares, that didn't mess things up too badly. So that really tells us that phone-based GPSs or typical kind of citizen science style approaches actually have reasonable chance at getting the farm location right. What we should be spending a lot more time is on the kind of imagery sources and modeling choices to get this to the point where at the farmer level, we have something that we're really confident in working. And sorry, let me get to conclusions. What that really tells us is that we really need to work together even more than maybe we are already. No one of these solutions is being cross-validated against either stuff we looked at or the other solutions in a way that you would be really certain an individual smallholder farmer or even an entire cooperative is not going to perhaps lose access to their livelihoods from export grade coffee. And so we really need to be combining these data more intelligently to get a stronger signal out of these imagery sources than we are right now. That was kind of I would say, like the more optimistic or charitable way to wrap that. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to take moderator's privilege and ask the first question. Does any of this matter? Do we know anything about the audit process that the EU plans to conduct?
Yeah, maybe. So basically, there is an authority that should be designated by each country that needs to check all the documents and whether these documents are okay or some pieces are missing. And so also this is a lack in the legislation because these authorities can differ by countries. So this is my knowledge about the audit part, but also maybe Silvia, you want to add something on
they don't do physical audits per se. It's really about all the documentation that the operator who is the operator who is the first one that puts the product in the EU. They need to upload all the documentation, so they will be looking at that documentation. And then if they see something and they see there is deforestation, then they fine these operators heavily. So that's why all these traders are very worried about this, and there's this whole risk of excluding entire supply chains that are not very strong in traceability and things, because the fee that they incur if they prove in deforestation, it's massive. So it's very risky.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start here. Going once. Okay.
Thanks for the presentation. I was wondering about your targeting of why you chose Honduras in the end, because I mean, also the images you showed, it's not like coffee forests, which are going to cause more issues in the EUDR framework than this kind of monocropped coffee, which we saw. And also if there are high rates of coffee to forest conversion in Honduras, like kind of drawing on this idea of using this deforestation product as a targeting mechanism to see if what we have works or not. But maybe you could talk about why you chose Honduras.
You want me to answer that? Yeah. Honduras. Why was Honduras chosen?
Okay, thank you. I couldn't hear you well from here. So we choose Honduras because in Honduras for us it was the easiest country since we had a big community of early action initiatives. So certification body initiatives, private organization initiatives that were testing different tools for compliance with EUDR. So it was a case study for us, but this study can be replicated in other countries. So it was only simplicity because we had a map of initiatives working with the different solutions, with different geolocation system, Earth observation tools. So only for that, for simplicity, and because we could create our case study, to test how these initiatives were performing against the benchmark.
I'll just add that the images I showed were a very selected sample, but there was a part of the sample that was basically in and around a national park on the eastern side that was much more heavily forested, where detection rates were much more problematic in general.
Thank you very much. I know this was perhaps not the focus of the case study, but I wanted to know if you've given any thought to sort of how the compliance information is managed. In other words, you're surveying these parcels, you might have some polygon data at a broader scale. Is that going to become part of sort of a property register or cadastral data set? Or is it just going to be purely privately managed sort of land rights? And so just a question if you've given thought to that already.
You mean the sample of data that we collected, or in general, the actual geolocations of them?
The question, I guess, is in general, if through the certification process, it involves a lot of parcel mapping, what happens to this parcel data? Is it going to become part of the formal property register at some point, or is it going to stay as a sort of parallel property register only for, coffee?
Yeah, I mean, to my knowledge, most of the sample that we drew, for example, or half of the sample, but the one that we drew from pre-existing data is already coffee registry data that's existing in Honduras. So to the degree that EUDR, again, for all the smallholders, doesn't require anything other than a point, it's not going to be like a viable alternative land registry product or something that would, come alongside that. I don't know if do you have a different thought?
Yeah. And some countries, they are building systems that are public in their countries. So for instance, Uganda is doing one, the government is leading one. And Ethiopia, the government is also leading like this database. Some companies, they don't want to depend on these systems because they don't know if they're going to get access to that information or not. So they build their own systems. And then it becomes proprietary data. And it's never the farmer owning their own data. It's always depending on an external agent to hold that data for them. So they become very dependent on the different supply chains because without that information, they cannot export. In the communities of practice that I mentioned to you, that we have one in Latin America and one for Africa that we're launching now, we are promoting like this is shared systems, collaborative systems, but it's not a requirement. The EU doesn't say yet the data has to be public, the data has to be shared. There should be one repository. The EU doesn't set those specifications. So it's up to you how you want to handle it. It's up to the operators who put the product in the EU, how they feel comfortable with this data. But yeah, we're always promoting shared systems because to decrease costs and things like that as well.
By the way, this is Sylvia, and she also works for COSA. So, all right, last question of the day and the conference.